Hutar, so if it comes undone, hakesher, the knot, v'huadin im nishmatu mimkoman, it's the same if it moves out of place. Umashikatav hiniach shel rosh, when it says that if you put on the head tefillin, rotzeh lomar shehid cord, means that you have fastened the head tefillin. Dehu ikar mitzvah hanacha, because that is the primary or main mitzvah of putting on the head tefillin. In other words, not just that it's on your head, it's that it's tightly on your head. Then you can be said to have concluded the mitzvah of putting on tefillin. If it's just on your head, you haven't yet finished it. Mahadeiku mevarech, you will tighten it and say the bracha. Dahavelei kinishmetu bimkoman, because it's the same as if it moved out of place. V'cheinim hutar hashel rosh lachar hiduko. And so too, if your head tefillin came undone after you fastened them on your head, you'll need to go back and say new bracha kashimahadko al harosho when you put it back on your head. Now, the question that you've been wondering is that we said previously that when you have your tefillin come out of place throughout the davening, according to the shla, you didn't need to say the bracha. Why should it be any different here? Mishna Bru's answer is going to be, indeed it is not any different. And according to what we wrote above in the name of the shla, you do not need to say a bracha if the knot of the tefillin came undone at all during the time of davening, during the time of tefillah. So actually, again, and this is where you see the Mishnah Brura coming out with a contemporary opinion that kind of reverses it, is that up until now we've seen this extended discussion. You say the new bracha at this stage, but not at that stage, not at that stage. But this last line is the most important of all, is that no matter what, you've said your morning bracha, you've said your initial brachot over the tefillin, no matter what happens to them afterwards, as long as it's during davening, you're not going to say a new bracha, because that is all part of that initial intention to put on tefillin. Okay. Next idea was you can say a bracha on borrowed tefillin. Ve'afilu b'sho'el shelo midat mutar. So just, in fact, some background before, not every mitzvah can be fulfilled with something borrowed. So sit, for example, you have to own. Talis as well, you have to own. Etrog, you have to own. Tefillin, you do not have to own, and therefore, shu'ulim borrowed tefillin are okay. Now, the next thing the Mishnah Brura goes into, afilu even, b'sho'el shelo midat. Borrowing without intention. Now, how can you borrow something without intention? It's when the guy never meant to lend it to you. Well, if you never meant to lend it to me and I'm borrowing it, normally isn't that theft? No, he says mutar, this is permissible. Denichale le'inish, it is good for a person. Another Aramaic word, nicha, is good. Nichale le'inish, inish Aramaic for a person. It is good for a person to mi'aved, that it would be done, from the word avad, to do, also an Aramaic word. This whole phrase is actually Aramaic. Mitzvah b'mamonei, a mitzvah with his money. In other words, if your tefillin are sitting there and you're not there, would you rather a stranger use them or not? The answer is yes. You would rather a stranger use your tefillin because it's actually it's a mitzvah for you, right? You're accruing more mitzvot by having more people use your tefillin. Why wouldn't you want somebody to use your tefillin? So whilst when it comes to some articles, you can't just say, well, I'm assuming you'd want me to use his car. You can actually say, I assume you would want me to use the tefillin, unless there's some indication to the contrary. Rak shir kapleim b'karishona. However, you must your kapleim fold them, right? In other words, put them back, wrap them up as they were originally. V'lo yotzi aimim komo harishon, and do not take them out from their original place, from the first place. You must keep them in the same place. Don't take them out. Kumo b'talit le'el b'siman yud daled ayin sham, like we saw about the talit earlier, using somebody else's talit, so you can't move it out of place. Gezulim, you cannot say bracha over stolen tefillin. Dahavele mitzvah haba'a be'aveira, because that would be a mitzvah that comes with an aveira. Doing a mitzvah through an aveira doesn't work. Ve'afilu achar yeush, and even after despair. The idea here is that if somebody's tefillin is lying in the street, so I need to return it to them. But what if they have given up hope of ever giving it back? Well, then that's considered yeush, despair, and then I could take possession. So if one guy stole somebody's tefillin and the guy gave up hope, and now I go and put on those tefillin, so I can say, well, now it's fine. No, even after despair, vafilu b'diavad, and even post facto, even after the fact, lo kiyeh mitzvah tefillin. It's not just that you can't say the bracha, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah at all. Ach im machar hatefillin le'achar yesh la'acher. However, if you sold the tefillin after Yeush to another person, Data Magen Avraham v'machatzira shekel, goes to the opinion, the buyer of the stolen tefillin that was sold after the original owner had despaired of ever giving them back. You can say a bracha, did have a Yeush vishinu reshut, because it is both despair and a new person is now in possession of these. So this speaks to the laws of ownership. At what stage does something no longer the property of the victim of the theft? So if he gave up hope of ever giving back and it was then sold, it actually is no longer his property. Even though obviously the thief would be liable to compensate him, but it's no longer his property, and that would be the same thing according to these opinions with the tefillin. However, the Taz and the Vilna Gaon wrote explicitly, Behedya, Aramaic for explicitly, that in Chol Gavne, we saw that earlier, in any manner, it is forbidden to say the bracha. However, to fulfill the obligation, it is implied in the words of the Vilna Gaon that you do indeed fulfill your obligation. However, when it comes to the bracha, asur, it's still forbidden, mikol makom, nevertheless. Mishum botzeya beirach, because of, there's a pasuk, botzeya beirach ni'etz Hashem, you break bread, or steal bread, really. Steal bread, and then you say a bracha, that angers Hashem. To say bracha over something that's not right, that you certainly can't do. Because even though through lakichator, you're taking them, literally, but it means your purchase, the gazela, the stolen property, has left the reshut domain of the ba'alim, the owners, even though it's now no longer the owner's property. We mentioned he's given up hope, and it's changed possession. Nevertheless, somebody who took from the second guy, nire de yuchal levarech. It seems that you are able to say the bracha. Kain matzati be'domesik Eliezer le'el, and this is what I found from domestic Eliezer. So the thief cannot put on the tefillin, cannot say the bracha. If the thief sells it to somebody after Yeush, he can fulfill the mitzvah, but is a dispute whether you can say the bracha. If the purchaser then sells it to a third party, then he can both say the bracha and fulfill the mitzvah. I think it goes without saying that we're not discussing whether this is right or wrong. It's just, let's say your tefillin you discovered were stolen without you knowing. Have you fulfilled the mitzvah? Basically, the answer is going to be, if you're the purchaser, you have fulfilled the mitzvah, but it's not the right kind of tefillin to have. Now, the next point in the Shulchan Aruch. Nahagu ha'olam. The world has the custom. Shelo lachlot, to not remove, take off tefillin, ad achar kedusha uvalatzion, until you have finished kedushat uvalatzion. Right, it's about page 154 in the article towards the end of the service. Keep your tefillin on right until then. The Ramah writes, V'yesh mi shekatev, some say, al tzad HaKabbalah, Kabbalistically, shelo lachlot ad she'amar behem shlosh kedushot v'arba kadishim. Do not take off your tefillin until you have said 3 kedushas, the kedushas like the kadosh, 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 and 4 kadishes, the yitzkadal, the yitzkadash, dahainu la'achar kadish yatom. In other words, after the mourner's kaddish. V'hachi nohagim ha-medaktikin, and this is how they behave, the medaktikin, those who are precise. So, whilst the Mechaber says it's okay to take off your tefillin after uvalatzion, the Ramah says, or the Mechaber says the custom is not take it after uvalatzion. Ramah says a better custom is don't take them off after the 4th kaddish. So let's see exactly where that fits into the service. Nagu ha'olam, the world has the custom. Yeshein mashin alem yotem min hachiyuv. There are those who do not keep tefillin on mashin to wait. And those who do not wait with their tefillin more than the obligation, the chiyuv of the obligation, the tzrichin guf naki, because they require a clean body. Guf body, naki, clean. Ve'akot lefi ma shehu adam. Everything depends on the person. Im ein lo guf naki u'midyaresh yafiach. If he does not have a clean body, and he worries that he might break wind. So if somebody knows that they're liable to do this, salek miyad, take them off immediately. And take a look later on. That this is why the majority of people do not leave them the whole day, because we do not have such a body consciousness, and we may end up treating these tefillin with a lack of respect, which would be a severe avera. So therefore he says, whilst it's praiseworthy to keep the tefillin on later, if you're not confident you'll be able to control yourself that whole time, then take them off as soon as you fulfilled your basic obligation. B'Shem Arizal Katvu, they wrote in the name of the Arizal, Shelo hayacholetz ad achar al kain lekabelacha. The Arizal never took off the tefillin until after al kain. V'yom sheyesh bo milah, and on the day when there is a bris, roi shelo lachlotz ad achar hamilah. It is fitting not to take off the tefillin until after the bris. Ki milah hi ot utfillin heim ot. Why? There's a special affinity between the bris and between the tefillin. They are both signs of the covenant between us and Hashem. They are both in the Torah called ot, a sign. Shalosh kedushot, three kaddishes. So three kedushas. So the Mishna Brura is not so happy with this wording in the Ramah. He says ta'ut soferhu. It is an error of the sofer, of the scribe. In other words, it's a printer's mistake. Uve'emet tzarich lomar. What it really should have said is shalosh kadishim va'arba kedushot. Three kaddishes and four kedushas, not three kedushas and four kaddishes. Why? Ki baruchu et Hashem nechshav chada. When we say baruchu, that is one expression of the holiness of God. Shu davar sheba kedusha, that's a matter of holiness. U'kedusha safa brura, and the kedusha that we say in the blessings of the Shema, kadosh kadosh kadosh, throughout those blessings, shnia, that's number 2. U'kedusha ta'amidah, and the kedusha we say in the repetition of the amidah, that's the famous one, nakadesh et shimcha. U'kedusha uvalatzion, and within uvalatzion is the 4th kedusha. U'shloshe kadishim, and what are the 3 kaddishes? Chatzi kaddish shekodem baruchu, the half kaddish before baruchu, that's at the end of Psukei de Zimra. V'chatzi kaddish sa'achar tefillah shmoneh esrei, and the half kaddish that is after the tefillah Yudchet 18, the shmoneh esrei Amidah. V'kaddish shalem, and the full kaddish she'achar uvalatzion, after uvalatzion. Those are the 3, so to speak, compulsory kaddishes in the service. What about the other 4 kaddishes that we say during Shacharit? Those are all for mourners. As far as the Mishnah Brura is concerned, you are not obligated to say those if there's no mourner. So that's what he says the Ramah really meant, is keep it on again until after Uvalatzion. After the Kaddish, after Uvalatzion. However, the Pri Megadim and other wrote that in places where they have the custom to say Kaddish Yatom b'chol yom achar aleinu, the mourner's Kaddish every day after aleinu, Tov shelo lachlotz ad achar Kaddish Yatom. It is good not to remove until you have finished that mourner's Kaddish. So if you can keep them until the mourner's Kaddish after aleinu, even better. V'anashim shenogin lakapel talit utflin u'la'anicham b'tikan ba'et amirat Kaddish, and the people who are accustomed to fold the talis and the tefillin and to place them b'tikan in their bags at the time of saying Kaddish, lo yafeh hein osim. They are not doing something nice. It's not a good thing that you are putting on the talis and tefillin during Kaddish. Because very much you should lechavein, intention, should have intention while they're busy saying Kaddish. And as we see later on, that in fact that Amen Yesh Merabah is an even higher level than Kedusha. As we see in the Magen Avraham. And certainly, lo gara mishar brachot Rabbanan, it is no worse than other brachot of the rabbis, the asur la'asot, afilu tashmish kal b'shashu mavarech, that you're not allowed to do even a usage kal, light, small, soft. In other words, you can't even do something small while you're busy saying a bracha. I'm saying a bracha over the apple, and while I'm doing that, I'm typing on my computer. You can't do that. Whenever you are saying any bracha, you need to pay full attention to what you're doing. So when you're saying a bracha, that's the case. When you're saying Amen Yesh Merabah, when you're answering Kaddish, certainly that's the case. So to fold up your tefillin when you're listening to Kaddish is not appropriate. Kamavur lakaman, as we'll see later on. And that's it for today.